Welcome back to Vanessa's podcast, and today I'm going to talk about the greatest ways to communicate professionally with friends or with someone of interest in your business, maybe an investor or donor or somebody who can have a great impact. So you really want to send your message across and you want to learn how to communicate effectively to the point, so your pitch is short, understandable, clear, manageable, and your opponent is understanding, is excited about the message, he wants to know more. He wants to know more about you within just a few seconds. So basically, this is a quick scenario, like you were talking about 2 or 3 minutes. Take the example, I've been in an elevator and you just have the short few minutes to convince this potential client to book you, to know more about you and what you're trying to sell or what you have. So effective communication is crucial to a healthy workplace and to success at work. Doesn't matter if you work behind a desk or computer screen. If you are the front-facing person in your company, if you can't communicate well, your job will be that much harder. Study shows we spend about 70 and 80% of our days communicating. So everyday professional conversation is the hardest form of communication. Doing a presentation can be learned with a structure. Leading a meeting also has its do's and don'ts. Interpersonal communication, it's all improv. You can plan and plan and plan, and you still have no clue how the person you're talking to will respond to anything you're saying. There are ways to practice and prep for this type of communication, especially when you spend time working on active listening. If you haven't tapped into basic foundational elements like listening, you can get into the back and forth of exchanging information, giving feedback, or asking questions. Conversation is so much more than what you say. It's about how you say it. So when you're talking to another person at work, you're not only balancing the content, you're attending to statue. We'll deep dive into the idea behind yes and versus yes but shortly, but it's important to note that something as simple as the 3-letter words you probably used in the last 24 hours can completely change the dynamic of a conversation, and the substitution of that 3-letter words from another 3-letter words can change everything. When it comes down to the environment where we do the communicating, a celebratory culture expedites effective and supportive communication. But what happens when both people aren't on board with the conversation? Why interpersonal communication is one of the most unexpected parts of professional communication, it can be the most rewarding. It's not every day you give massive presentation or lead group meeting. Chances are it is every day you talk to people in your office or people you come across. That makes it something you can almost immediately work on and improve with just a little nudge. So now let's talk about active listening. Think about the last conversation you had. How much of it do you remember? Did you stay focused on what they were saying? Or did you drift off thinking about something or someone else? Most often we do that. When I started teaching, I work with kids. Kids are great. They let you know immediately when they aren't listening to you. They actually show you because they'll start fidgeting, talking, humming, and or say straight up, this is boring. Adults are terrible. They'll smile, nod, and look like they are paying attention. all while thinking about their email, work. This is the adult version. Things that are happening at home, their date or breakfast. It happens, and all we can get away with it's in many different situations. The problem comes when you need to remember something you just heard, or if a person just gave information that is imperative to your job. Then you have to guess, or you go back and ask, or you do it wrong on what you thought you heard. Hearing and listening are two very different things. We hear things all the time. So here's an example. I was in a cube next to someone who breathed very loudly through their mouth. It made me crazy. I could not concentrate until I got a headphone. All I would think about was his breathing. So that's all I could focus on. When I started focus on it, it was all I heard. Active listening is making that conscious choice to hear what someone is saying and understand the message being conveyed, usually by thinking about it. Essentially, you're digesting what's been said. This is a critical skill in improv and life. When two people come together to create a moment, they have to actively listen to what the other person is saying to create reality in that moment. One of the activities I use to develop active listening is called three-line conversation. Two people face one another, and in three lines they establish who they are and where they are. Lines can be one sentence or one word long, and they can go on for 5 minutes. There's no catch. Essentially, one person talks, another responds, and the first person responds to that response. For example, person A, Mom, I really want to use the car tonight. Person B, only if you come here and dry these dishes. Person A, okay. Simple, right? It's actually one of the hardest activities we teach. It's taught before the longer improv moments because it creates the necessary foundation for using improv as a professional development tool with any kind of focus. In the previous example, person A is the child of driving age, person B is the mom, and they are in the kitchen. The importance of listening comes in and is best shown with an example where listening was done poorly. The example comes from a longer improv moment. In a private workshop for an engineering firm, one of the things they wanted to work on was listening skill. In most workshop, I start with listening skill anyway because it's the foundation of all communication. The man and the woman start up to start the conversation, the woman start dancing, and the man sat down, not looking at her and reading the newspaper. She said, Dad, do you think I'm good enough for American Bandstand? To which he replied, sure. The conversation keeps going, and finally she asked him to pay attention to her, to which he replied, this is the weirdest strip club I've ever been to. I am uncomfortable just recalling this situation. I called for the conversation to end. We gave them a round of applause, and then I followed up with, how was that? And what made you make those choices? He answered first and said, you told me that any choice was a good choice as long as we make it. This is really true, I do say this often, but this guy's choice simply didn't fit the situation and probably broke a few human response rules. I reply, sure, but in the conversation she was your daughter. He replies, no, she wasn't. And he immediately looked at his moment partner who said, yes, I was. Dead silence. He didn't hear her because he wasn't listening. He looked mortified, but he missed that bit of information and kept moving with the conversation along with the original premise. This happens a lot in real life. People are so focused and fixated on what they want to say and their next thought or agenda that they miss what other people say. This happens to me a lot. I have done that for the longest time. So I can really relate to this. Why? It could have been all agenda-focused thinking, which we'll discuss. It was most likely a combination of an agenda, looking forward to making his funny comment and not listening to what his partner was saying. Fortunately, listening is a skill that can be learned over time, and unfortunately, it is a conscious choice. Why a person hears between 20,000 30,000 words during a 24-hour period, most people remember only 17-25% of what they listen to. So that is a very small percentage. This happens because you have a choice to decide to actively listen or to simply hear what people are talking about. When you choose to listen to someone, you're really hearing what they have to say, making sense of it in your brain and working on the meaning behind it. Simply hearing is exactly what it sounds like, hearing someone but not processing it. In active listening, the listener also shows that they are listening. The head nods, smiles, and and we all do all that we have politely learned to do. The comprehension usually follows. The unfortunate part of this, it's really easy to learn this sign of listening and use them when you're not actually listening. The engine of a conversation between the dad and daughter said, "Yep," and nodded a few times while she was talking to him. He was exhibiting those things he had learned to do to show he was listening, but he was not actually listening at all. So try this. How do you show you're listening? Take a moment to think about a recent conversation. You can remember one. Immediately follow your next conversation. Note the ways that you show that you're listening. Maybe it's smiling and nodding, or maybe it's another way. Jot a few physical and mental action down before you forget. And don't spend so much time paying attention to yourself that you forget to listen. Okay, so identify how you demonstrate active listening. If you're not doing it well, you can easily increase the intensity or frequency of what you're already doing as a start. This activity draws focus to specific skill you might be using to show listening. To improve, we need to understand how we listen. Taking notes of the ways you show your active listening forces you to pay closer attention to how well you listen. If you found you are in fact not actively listening and simply nodding along, by all means, try to tune in more. So, there are ways to show active listening that are better than the yeses and nods and While those are ways to show you are listening, there are several ways to demonstrate your understanding and improve enhance many of them. First, let's dig into how improv helps with the act of listening. When you're creating a moment in improv, you know you need to clearly define who you are, where you are, what you want, and how you feel. When you're working with one or two other people, you have to create the moment together, and the who, where, what, and how have to agree. I think one of the bigger